Entertainment's good. Okay. 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 We are on Daf Nun Daladam and Aleph on the bottom. 54a. Um, about 2, 4, 5 lines from the bottom. Right in the middle it says Khalsa. There are the Yashiv. Let me just expand this so it takes up the whole screen. Okay. So 54a, 5 lines from the bottom. Nun Daladam Aleph. There's what Hashem do. Nun Daladam the base. Okay, so let's start with a story, a short story. This is not a miraculous story. So we call a litfish Maisa. It's a story of a Rosh Shiva. So there's no miracles. Just someone doing something exceptional. Story I heard from Rabbi Ephraim Shapiro, a rabbi in Florida, in North Miami, beach, I think. No, not Michigan. Tenzine, yeah. Even that, yeah. So he tells a following story of Schneur Kotler, who was the son of Aaron Kotler. His father, Aaron Kotler, founded yeshiva in Lakewood, EMG, and his son took over after his passing, Schneur Kotler, until he passed away in the early 80s, I think. So Schneur Kotler lived in Lakewood, New Jersey, near the yeshiva, and he rented a house. I don't think there were apartments there. It must have been a house. And he had a landlord. He was a Jewish landlord. He was respectful, but not at all religious and not particularly fond of religious Jews. He didn't dislike them, but they weren't his, he didn't invite them to his parties. But that's important to say. Okay, thank you. Thank you. That's the proper way to say it. So Rav Kotler asked this fellow permission to build a sukkah. I guess it was his first year there, and he built a sukkah, or maybe some years after. And one year there was a very, very strong storm. That's sukkahs. I remember when I was living in New Orleans, Louisiana, in the late 70s. So New Orleans, if you know where that is, we had a storm that actually Arab sukkahs blew apart our sukkah. Not blew apart, completely took it apart. I remember Arab sukkahs, my father putting it back together 2 hours, 4 seconds. But here in Lakewood, New Jersey, which is not subject to that kind of typical weather, they had a terrible storm and blew the sukkah to pieces. It was destroyed. So the neighbor, the landlord, who was not particularly fond of the dispute, but was a nice fellow, a Jewish fellow, a nice fellow, said, you know what, I'll build you the sukkah. I see how you do it. It's very handy, I guess. He built the Cutlers a brand new sukkah. Very nice, full sukkah. And the Cutlers really appreciated it, and they thanked him very much. For the next decades, not years, they continued to use the sukkah. After this landlord even passed away, I guess the son, or wherever, maybe they moved to a different house, was still passed away. They're still using the sukkah. And his children and grandchildren tell them, Zaidi, Rosh Hashiva, whatever they call them, maybe it's time for a new sukkah. It's a few decades old. You have wood, it doesn't last that long. You have rain, it gets old. They said, maybe, it would be nice if you get a new sukkah. Nothing fancy, just something that doesn't look like it's falling apart. And he insisted. He says, this Jew, he built it for us. He's not religious, didn't keep anything. Maybe this is his only schus, his only merit in the next world. You have to hold on to the sukkah and keep using it for his sake. They kept using it. Sometime later, I don't know, maybe another decade later, finally, I guess as the grandkid said to him, Zaidi, it's really time. This time the Zaidi agreed. He said, I'll agree to on one condition. Take apart the sukkah, we'll cut up the pieces, we'll measure them so we'll use them for our Pesach counters, to cover the counters in the kitchen for Pesach. You have to do something with this mitzvah. This person did. That's what they did for years to come. They used that sukkah walls for the Pesach counters. And there's nothing miraculous here. Just somebody who sees things differently than the average person. The average person, myself included, would say, sukkah's old, it's not respectful. House is old, whatever. Tzitzis are old, time to go. But who gave them to you? Whose chus is being carried on the weight of the sukkah, or the tzitzis, or the talis, or whatever, or the siddur, tanach, whatever you have in your house? Somebody donated it. Somebody gave it to you, a present. I have a Tanakh in my house that's donated as a wedding gift from a woman, an elderly woman. This goes back almost 30 years. I still use that Tanakh. So I want to. She was a traditional woman, not very knowledgeable. I still want to use that. That's my take from the story. Uh, you have something. You need. It's not just about the mitzvah. You have to see a bigger, broader perspective sometimes about somebody else. It's not only us. You have to remember that we're carrying others with us. They're carrying us sometimes. We're carrying them. So you have to be mindful. A great sign of a great person is consideration. How they're always thinking of somebody else. That's her Shner Kafir. Look at. So Mirz Hashem, we should bear that in mind and carry that with us and always be thinking about others as well as ourselves. That's what Hashem. Okay, that's the story. And no miracles, just so you know, a Litvish Maisa is the Litvish story is the Gadol does the Ratzon Hashem. That's the whole thing. Not like no miracles where the Hashem does the Ratzon of the person. It's simple trusting in Hashem. Yeah. Okay, so let's start. We're 5 lines from the bottom. So the Gemara is going to bring a short story, about a case where how they paskin like Rav. Remember, yesterday we discussed a machlokas between Shmuel and Rav. Rav said the clothes that the widow owns deduct from the value of the ksuva, the 200 zuz, let's say, in case of basula, it gets deducted according to Rav. Here's a story where somebody came to Bezdin and the Ravina, in this case maybe, Paskin, he ruled that the clothing of the almana gets deducted. A very interesting story. Then we're going to discuss 2 stories about, it's 2, 3 stories about incidents about the dunya, about cases of the dowry, how that works. And then also how to, last incident before the Mishnah is talking about a case of a woman, a family member is supposed to get fed mizonos from the father's estate, and how the family try to, save themselves some money with that work. And then we'll discuss the next piece when we start the Mishnah, God willing, is Tosefes Ksuva. How to add on to Ksuva, if you want to add additional amount to Ksuva. Okay, so let's start 5th line from the bottom. Chalasa, the Bey Rev Eliashiv, a daughter-in-law from the house of Eliashiv, had the following sin. Her husband passed away. This daughter-in-law, her husband passed away, and she wanted to collect she wanted to collect a ksuva, and they wanted to go to court. So here's this: Kalsa derbei Eliashiv have katava ksuvasa miyasmi. She asked she wanted to collect her ksuva from the heirs of the father, from the orphans. They could be they're older orphans, but they're still the descendants, the sons of the deceased. Havakom mimamtia lahu lebeidina. They're going together. They're taking her going with her to the Bezdin, to the court. So Amri, so these sons, the orphans, said to her, to the widow, Zilalon milsa, the tizli hachi. It's an embarrassment. It's not so dignified that you're coming with this. What you're wearing, it's not so dignified to go to court like that. They had ulterior motives here. Don't worry. They weren't worried about it. I assume it's like a stepmother. It wasn't their actual mother. Okay, so Azla levishtinhu vachstinhu lekulamana. She went and she dressed with all her clothing. They didn't have like 14 different dresses back. They had like a couple. She must have put just about everything she had on to look more presentable. I guess that's a way to look presentable in court. Why? Because they wanted to make. I'll give a little sneak peek here. We said according to the Meiri, it's not just what she's wearing that gets deducted in the ksuva. This is within Rab. It's everything she owns. So they wanted that she couldn't trick them, saying I don't own that much. She came to court wearing all her clothes. So the judge would rule that you have to deduct all your clothes. They could see all her clothes, and they would quickly know how much it's worth. So that was what they're up to here. Also, Lekami de Ravina. They came in front of Ravina. Amar lahu. He said, "Dilchasa kavasi de Rav. The halacha is like Rav. Damar almana shaman masha aleha. halacha is like Rav, that when you evaluate the ksuva, you deduct the value of her clothes. So they kind of deceived. If they trusted her, they wouldn't have to do this, but I guess they didn't trust her that much, and so they had her come to the court with all her clothes, so they would know, okay, we can deduct the value of all your clothes, and there's no hiding any of them from your actual ksuva. So it's an interesting story about what goes on in Beis Din, just in case you shouldn't know from it. But it's also interesting case. It shows us that we hold like Rav, passing like Rav, that the clothes get deducted from the value, all her clothes, of the ksuva.
Such a case such as this, just in modern and commercial silver, if she was a early Russian marriage, she gets 200 zuz.
Yeah, minus the value of the clothing.
Plus, the orphans have to keep her from the state of the husband.
No, the two are it's either or. Here they're actually taking her formally to the Beis Din to collect the ksuva. So then they lose
200 zuz minus whatever she's wearing.
Right. Whatever she owns technically. Here they made her wear it all of it. Yeah. Okay, so now we're gonna have cases of nedunya, of dowry. Remember we're saying there's a takana, the chamim is part of the Tanai Ksuva, that a husband, so a father, let's put it that way, a father is supposed to provide a nedunya, a dowry for his daughter. So here we're gonna have two cases actually. Ahu da amra lahu, this is second to last line, second to last word. Ahu da amra lahu nedunya labaras. He said, somebody, as Rashi says, second to last line in Rashi, Hu da amra lahu tzavash chivmira, someone who is on his deathbed, basically. He's going to pass on to the next world. Let's let Rabbi Simkin in here. Okay. Good morning, Rabbi Simkin.
Good morning. How are you?
Dalet Amud Aleph, second to last line.
Okay.
Okay. Ahu da amra lahu dunya labras. As Rashi we just pointed out, it says talking about a shchiv mira, someone who's about to die. He says, I want to give an adunya, a dowry to my daughter. As Rashi says, kind of like the standard nedunya package. The standard, you want to give us a standard dowry of clothing and things like that, and adornments and jewelry, whatever. So it's a standard thing, so it's a known price. And then, last line, zal nedunya. The price of the nedunya went down. I guess back then prices went down sometimes. Now they seem to only go one direction, up that is. But back then the value of the nedunya went down. So what do we do then? What is he required to? The Yisomim are required to. And this fellow passed away. So where it's supposed to come from the father's estate. The Yisomim, what do? The orphans of the father, who are now the inheritors. How much nedunya, how much dowry did they give to their sister or stepsister, whatever the case? How much did they give? He specified what it was. Give this. Give, let's say,
Give 1,000 shekels.
No, they didn't mention money. They said give the package with, let's say, it's like 4 dresses, 2 necklaces. It's specified items, and the value of the items went down. Before it was worth 1,000. He said, give this X, Y, and Z to my daughter as a nedunya, as a dowry. Then the value went down. The cost went down. Instead of costing 1,000 shekels, only 500 shekels. So what are the Yisomim required to give to this girl? Are they required to give the value, and the father said it was 1,000, or just the actual items? It's 500 shekel now. Yes. Yes. Yeah, whatever it is. Yeah. Right. 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 Go with it. Right. Right. Right.
Standard package.
Right. We're going to discuss that next case next. It's a little bit different. So, yeah. So first we're talking about when it goes down. We'll see. It's a little bit. We'll see. You're asking a good question. We'll just. Yeah.
Simple question.
Yeah.
Just in case if they increase or decrease, if he has given her a dowry.
He hasn't given it to her yet.
So it's irrelevant if it increases or decreases. He's giving it to her as is at that particular time.
Right. So.
It's the item, not the value.
Right. Right. So
it's irrelevant decrease or increase.
Right.
That's not sense.
Right.
That's a silly question.
Right. I think maybe Rashi is addressing your question here in the end of the last Rashi. So that Rivach, we'll go through the answer, and then we'll what the psak is. So Amar Rav Idi Bar Avin Purna the Yasmi. As Rashi says, the Rivach, the advantage, the gain goes to the Yisomim. Now they only have to give what he committed to. Why would you think otherwise? Rashi says, "V'lo Rinan Nisiv la Demei Hanadunya Kiyom Hatzava." Don't give it like the Demei Hanadunya Kiyom Hatzava, the value of the Nadunya the day it was commanded. You might think that he said, "Give her this, his tzava, his command, his will." He said his last orders was a better way to say it. His last whatever it was that he says. You might think that it has the value of the time. Just give this to her. That's Rashi's not really answering that here for us. But the idea is you're asking a good question. Why would we not think? Why would you think? Perhaps you would say that the father wanted this value to go to his daughter, or maybe not. No, the answer is no.
Increase.
Uh-huh.
There's the loss.
Right. So you're right. The next case we actually discuss is not directly to that. Right. It's the items respective. The next case we'll discuss is not addressing the question. My mistake. The next case we're going to see addresses when he gave a particular value. Here he said items. Next he's going to say value. But, right. It's a different case, right? So if he Tosas read into that one. For dinami ima hukra hanudunya. Okay, right. Tosas says if the value of the dunya goes up in value, shchayim niknos lahayikarim kifi masha nimkarim achshav. Right. Yeah, that's right. The Tosas read said the last line. Thank you. He says that right. If you, it's items respective. If you committed to items, he has to give her items. They have to give her items, right? Okay. So now we're going to have another case, the last 3 words. And this time he doesn't say items. He says items, but he gives a dollar or shekel or zuz amount. He says Ahuda Amar Lahu. It's the same idea. The Shchimira person who was dying, and he says that he's committing to an idunya for his daughter, dowry for his daughter. The someone will pay out of the estate. The orphans will pay out of the estate. Amar Lahu. Flip the page. Arba mea zuze min chamra, the bras. He says, give 400 zuz of a wine to my daughter as a dowry. Right. Right. So, and then what happens? Iyakar chamra, the wine goes up in value. So now it's worth, I don't know, the same amount of wine. Let's say it was 400 bottles for argument's sake. And now, for 400 zuz, you would only get, or for 400 zuz, for 400 zuz you get less. You get less bottles, but 400 bottles would be a lot more money now. Yeah. So what do we do in that case? Rav Yosef Rav Chali Yasmi. The benefit, the gain goes to the Yisomim, to the heirs, to the orphans. Now, in other words, he has to give her 400 zuz worth. He had to give her 400 zuz worth of wine, and what at the time was 400 zuz. He has to give 400 zuz. Right. So in that case, the orphans also get the benefit of here as well. They don't have to pay more now that if whatever it would be worth now, the same amount of stuff would not go up. Whatever they committed to now, at that time, that's what you have to pay. You don't have to.
Sorry, the previous case is the father left dresses, for example, to the daughter, and they're worth 100 zuz. They've gone up to 200 zuz. So the orphans have to give the girl 100 zuz, and they keep it, and they take the dresses and sell them. For example.
Oh, the dresses go up in value. Yeah, whatever the dresses are worth, I guess, by the time that they sell them, they would just deduct it.
They would give the 400 zuz to the girl, and then they would take the wine and sell it. Because it's worth more than 400 zuz, so they get more money.
The wine.
Sorry?
It's 400 zuz of wine.
Yeah. And is anything over 600 zuz?
They can't. What gives them the right to take the wine?
No, they
Give her the 400 zuz and take the wine.
Yeah. It says here,
They give it.
they give 400 zuz to the girl, they take the wine and sell it.
They-
And they get 600 zuz for it.
They give her 400 zuz worth of wine, whatever it is. It could be they give her money or wine. It's not clear, but they give her 400 zuz worth. They don't give her, it's not like it's frozen in time. You're committed to 400 zuz worth of wine now, and now it's worth that same amount is worth 800. Now they don't give her 800. They give her 400. There'll be less bottles, whatever.
I'll give them 400 zuz.
Yeah, then it could be the opposite. If it goes down, then they lose. Whatever. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So now we have one more case. One more case. This is a similar case for the Mishnah. Okay. Last case, second line on the page. It's talking about a case of Yisomim having to feed their stepmother, it seems. Doesn't seem like their biological mother. We hope it's not their biological mother. As you'll see in a moment.
So it's stepmother that they're not to be able
It says Isas Abba, the wife of their father. That's pretty clear. It's just a stepmother, not a mother. So let's see the case. So Kreve de Rabbi Yochanan, the relatives of Rabbi Yochanan, Havalu Isas Abba. They had a wife of their father, a stepmother. It was their biological father. He had another wife, and who was still alive. The Hava Mafside Mizone, who was, eating. She was. Let's just use Rashi's shot. The other shot, she ate a lot, or she used up a lot of the assets of the father, more so than to be expected. So Asulika Meder of Yochanan. They came to their relative of Yochanan to tell them what to do, how to help them out. Armelahu, this is when their father's still alive still. Yochanan, when the father's still alive. So Armelahu, Rav Yochanan told them, gave them the following advice. Izilu v'amule le'avuchon de'nisyachid la'ara le'mizona. Tell your father, or convince your father, they should designate a piece of land that will serve. They'll get the payros, the dividends, whatever it is, or physical fruit. If that's maybe the case, and that will be designate that for her mizonas, for her getting fed. She has to agree to it, to agree to this property too. And this way, they'll have a set thing, and she won't be able to eat up the assets of the family. She's eating away what she needs. Once she passes away, then it's going to be problematic. Because then once the father passes away, then she gets fed from the estate that's theirs. If their father's, I guess they still care, but now they care even more once the father passes away. It's coming out of their pocket, literally. Okay, so also, so afterwards, after the death, they went to Reish Lakish. Also, made the Reish Lakish for a din. They went to Reish Lakish, Rabbi Yochanan, brother-in-law. Amr he said the following. No, he said, Kol shekein sharibala mizonos. He said, no, the fact that you dedicated a piece of land for her to get profits, to get food from, doesn't decrease her choices. Doesn't mean she can only get from that piece of land. She can get from the estate if she wants, and she can get from that piece of land, whatever she wants. We've given her more options. You haven't helped yourself. It's going to hurt yourself. So they said to him, what do you mean? Amrulay, they said to Rish Lakish, Rabbi Yochanan lo Amar Hachi. Rabbi Yochanan didn't say like you. He said we can dedicate a piece of land, and that's it. So Amar Lahu, so Rish Lakish said back to the Yisomim, to the heirs, the Zilu Havula, go give her food that she's coming to her. Below, and if not, Lafikna lechu Rabbi Yochanan mo naichu. I will literally means I'll take Rabbi Yochanan out of your ears, basically. I'll remove Rabbi Yochanan from your ears. Yes. Take him out of your ears. Not literally, I mean, what you heard from him, they're stuck. It means either means that he'll put them and excommunicate them or do other things to force them to do what he says. Yes, not the first time. They were Baruch looked at, yes. Brother-in-laws, and they argued.
What should I say? The father should have said, let this food be innocent.
Right.
Not force it.
Right, well, that's the conclusion. You'll get to the conclusion of the Gemara, yeah. They used it not properly. And Rabbi Yochanan, we'll see, as Alan pointed out, we'll see in the end how he holds. So Yeah, so let's read the rest of the story here. Here it says, also look made Rav Yochanan. So the orphans are not taking the sitting down. They come to Rav Yochanan and they told him what Rish Lakish said. You told us to designate this piece of land. And Rish Lakish told us it doesn't work. She can still get from our property or from our estate or from that piece of land, whichever one she wants. It hasn't helped us. So Rav Yochanan said back to the orphans, the sons, Ma Esa, what could I do? Shekanagdi cholak alai. Someone of my stature argues on me. Rish Lakish, it was originally a Talmud, but eventually he became on his level. And he says, what can I do? Somebody of my stature disagrees with me. So Amar Rabbi Avohu. Avohu says that we'll see that later on, apparently Rabbi Yochanan reconsidered exactly and sort of agrees with Rish Lakish. As Alan said, we'll get to it. Amar Rabbi Avohu, l'didim mefarsh le'minei Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan said to me as follows. This is the conclusion, I think, that we don't ask him necessarily, but this is how Rabbi Yochanan ends off. And Rabbi Avohu says it in the name of, heard it from Rabbi Yochanan as follows. Amr limizonos, if he says that he's dedicating a piece of property for mizonos, for provide for her, as we said out, then ribala mizonos, then that increases the level of mizonos. That seems how we pass at least. That doesn't detract from her options, that increases her options. Now she has a piece of land and she can collectively stay. Amr bim mizonos, you say with the mizonos or with this particular mizonos, with this particular field, katzasla mizonos, and you have designated it, specified, and limited what she can get it from. So it depends on the terminology that the husband or the father, or whatever, before he passed away, how he verbalized it, how he terminology used, that would make a big difference, determining how it's used. Yes. Yeah, that's a good question. We see that concept a lot. You can do subtle things that make a big difference. We just saw a case where these very smart family of Elyashiv suspected that this woman would be hiding her clothes, her wardrobe, so they made her, tricked her into bringing them all to court with her. I guarantee that they would get away with it. That's not deception, it's just making sure that the party's honest. But here, you're right. A person is very small, slip of the tongue, or not knowing what you're saying, makes a huge difference. But if you live in Yehuda, you don't have to worry about this. Because in Yehuda, the orphans can only say, take your ksuva and you're done. But do we pass like that? In the Amazonas, let's just try to, it's like a day ago. Let's see how we pass it. We pass like Yehuda or not? Okay, in any case. Nothing. Okay, I'll see it right now. Anyway, in Yehuda, in the area of Yehuda, they would always just tell that they could just say to the almana, "Here's a ksuba, and we're done." That would be the simple solution. These are obviously places that it did not do that. Yes, it was. That's like 100 goats. Father bought a kid, a goat, for 2 sudas, by 100 goats. That's you can buy a piece of land, whatever how big it was. Yes, it's supposed to be. Yeah, we discussed that sometimes there's not enough. It's not enough left over. Not in the case of when when the wife predeceases the husband and there's only children. Sometimes there's not enough food for the sons and daughters for a year. You can only give the maximum that he owns. It doesn't have better than that. And then if there's not enough for the daughters, and the sons and the daughters get, the sons don't, they collect. Okay. So Hadron alach nara shnespatta. That's what it said. Okay, so now we'll start the Mishnah. Here it is. Here's the L'chaim. Chaim. Chaim Kanievsky used to finish all of Bavli, Shas Bavli, Shas Yerushalmi, Mishnayos, Kol Tarkura every year. So for him, making a siyum was like no big deal. It was every couple of days. So he didn't make a siyum. He just had a l'chaim. I don't know on what, but yes, it wasn't very strong stuff. Okay, so let's start the Mishnah. I left out a Tosfos. I'm sorry. Tosfos previously said, so if you look at the case of Yochanan, he's giving advice to his family members how to win the court case, so to speak. If you remember, not so long ago, it was about 4 or 5 days ago, we had a case where Yochanan also gave advice to his relatives, and he felt bad about it. He says, a person like me shouldn't be doing things like that. Tosfos asks, so why is it okay here? So the answer he gives is because here, the sons can only designate a piece of land if the woman is willing to take it. Koli tirtza lekabel, second Tosfos. So then it's not like he's giving advice against somebody. He's just giving them advice the woman could say yes or no to. So it's not really like trickery. It's just something that's less offensive or whatever you want to say. It's up to the woman in that case as well. Okay, so let's do the Mishnah here. Afal pi, zagdei ligatan. Afal pi, she'amru basula goba masayim v'amana mana. Even though we say, interesting terminology, right? Afal pi, even though we say that a basula collects 200 zuz, v'amana mana, almana gets almana as the terminology. She gets a 100 zuz in the event of divorce or death of her husband. In ratzah lahosif, if the husband wants to add onto it, afilu mea mana, even 100 mana, you could add on. Even it's was that 10,000? Is that right? Yeah, you can add on to it. You can add on a lot if you want. If he wants to. So the first question that pops out here, the Pnei Yeshua is about, what's saying afal pi? Even though, why say even though? Even though what? Just say Basula gets 200, Almana gets 100. If he wants to add, he can add. That's an even though. That's an even though. So the Pnei Yeshua says, because we just said before, the previous Mishnah, you're not allowed to do less. You can't do less. So even though we said you could do less, you can't do less, but more you can do. That's the afal. Even though you can't do less, but more you can. That's the even though. A mea mana, I think is each mana is 100 zuz. So 10,000 zuz, right. So if you want to say, yeah, a mana is 100. Masayim, yeah, masayim is. You can buy it. You live on it. It's a lot of. Yeah. So but quite a bit of property. It's a lot of money. Anyway, that's what they say. So even though there's a formal amount that let's say it's the Rabbanan, just for argument's sake, makes the Mishnah go easier. Even though the Rabbanan enacted, if it's the Rabbanan, they enacted the Kesuva, certainly the amount seems to be certainly Almana is the Rabbanan. Even though that's the amount, you could add on to it. Okay. So, Mana Yosef. So third line in Mishnah, in the middle, this Armala onis Garsha. So let's say this woman who has not just a regular Kesuva, she has the additional as well. She becomes a widow or a divorcee. Bein mina erisin, bein mina nesuin. Whether it's a divorce or her husband passed away after the first part of marriage, erisin, or after the full marriage, nesuin, go vesakol. She collects everything. She collects the whole thing. Whether you have to write a Kesuva when she's in Rusa, we discussed, but let's assume there is, at least there is a Kesuva, or maybe there is a Chiyuv, whatever. She could collect it all. Rabbi Elazar ben Azari Omer, Nasuin go v'nesakol. Only if he passed away and she becomes a widow or a divorcee after the full Nasuin, the full marriage, go v'nesakol. Then she collects the additional, the Ikar Kesuva, the 200, the 100, she definitely collects when she's just in a Rusa, just after the first part of marriage. But the additional, the Tanakama says she collects that as well when she's in a Rusa. And Rabbi Elazar ben Azari says the additional, the add-on, the Tosefet that the husband adds on, she does not collect. Minasuin gova, as I call. In Erisin, basula gova masayin lamana mana. If it's from Erisin, she only collects, the basula gets to only 200, and Amana only 100. Why? Shalo kasav la ela al manas lakonsa. He only intended to give it to her on the condition that there be a full marriage. We'll discuss later that we determine. I think it's blot and a half now. We'll see that we determine what his omed das. We determine what he would want. What's the standard thing that most people would want? Obviously, we can't ask him after he passed away. Most people would want this, says Rabbi Zarya. Most people would only give additional levels of ksuba as an endearment of the new wife. They're coming to have a marriage together, not just the first stage of marriage. So therefore, Rabbi Zarya says, of course, the regular ksuba, 200 or 100, that you have to give, whether it's Nisuin, the full marriage, or just Erusin. But the second stage, but the Tosefes, the additional add-on, whatever you added on, 100, 10,000, whatever you want to add on, that is only, says Rabbi Elazar, only if they did the full marriage. Anakam says, doesn't matter, even Erusin. But that's what Rabbi Elazar says. Okay. So Rabbi Yehuda, so now we have a discussion between Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says the following. We quoted this discussion before. We quoted two opinions before. We'll quote two opinions again. Later we'll see there's three opinions actually. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Imratza Kosev L'Basula Shtar Shel Masayim. If he wants, he can write her like he has to, like a ksuba of 200. This is for a basula. That's a star of 200, a regular ksuba. He koseves, and she writes like a receipt. Shomer, if a receipt, his kabalti mimcha mana, that I received 100 from you, even though that never happened. She's really just being mochal. She's just foregoing on half the ksuba. But in order for that foregoing to work, that mechila, we'll see, it has to be in writing. It has to be formally written this way. We'll discuss that further in the Gemara. Ulalmana mana, and to almana, he has to write official, like a regular ksuba, that she's going to get 100. The Eco 7, and she writes, is kabalti mimcha chamishim. And she writes, I received 50 from you, zuz, chamishim zuz. I received from you 50 zuz, 50, even though she didn't get it. She's just formally writing that she's mochalit. Like, I receive this, I'm mochalit. But it has to be in writing. It has to be written out. Rav Meir Omer, Rav Meir holds, no, you can't do that. If you actually got it, that's fine. If you actually got half your ksuba, then that's fine. You can say, I received half, and now I'm only owed half, that's fine. But you can't play games. A woman has to receive the full amount. That's a tachanat tachamim. Rav Meir Omer kol apoches to basula in masayim or amana mana. Anyone who gives less detracts from a basula the full 200 that's coming to her, and detracts from the almana, a widow, the 100. Hareza bilas nos. That's considered like a bilas nos, as if when they actually consummate the marriage, it's like like they're not married, so to speak. Because why? Because the woman is not so meches daita. She's not so meches dat. She's not. If she doesn't have a ksuva that's really in her pocket, so to speak, she's not. She's reluctant about the whole marriage. She doesn't go into marriage with an insurance policy, so to speak. The ksuva is essentially. She's not going into the marriage with that. So she doesn't rely on that. So she's not so mechdas, and it's as if, what Meir says, it's like they're not formally married. It's like they're having intercourse, not something that you get death penalty from, but something that's extramarital, so sort of like not being married yet and cohabiting with his wife, with his to-be wife. It's that's another issue that I was bothered by. I didn't see an answer yet. Yeah.
Why is this a constant? Because the father really wants this guy very badly. He's royalty. He wants his daughter to marry royalty. So he provides an adunya for it to be attractive for the guy to marry his daughter.
Right.
Well, to me, it sounds like this is just the opposite. It's a woman who wants this guy so badly that, I'm willing to write off half.
Right. That's
effectively write off half.
Yeah, that's essentially what he's doing. I don't know. Yeah, that sounds like a reasonable reason why. Yeah. Well, see, Yossi says that this mechila that she is, that's in their Bryce, I believe. And Yossi says that she can be mochal just verbally, doesn't have to do it in writing. Rav Meir says you can't be mochal, you have to actually give it. Rav Yehuda says the mechila has to be in writing. Rav Yossi says it can be even verbally. But it's an interesting concept. I believe so, if I remember correctly. We'll get to it. I'll see it. Yeah.
talk about what I'm saying. The virgin, the widow, what we call the half, and they have a good resource active when they get anything.
No, it's as if they're
If
promiscuous.
they have a promiscuous,
As if,
nothing.
as if. No, it's as if they did it. It's the marriage is valid. Um, Rav Meir says you're not allowed to live with your wife without a ksuba. Be together or just be. Yeah, without a ksuba, yeah. Well, yeah, that's correct. Even though people do write what the luch is, the requirement of the Rabbana is just right before Nesuin, you have to write a ksuba, right? So there's no formal requirement until then. But, right, so it's if. It's an absolute requirement. You can't get out of it. You have to commit to giving her this amount.
So nothing. If anyone reduces the half to the virgin or the other, and he does an effort for a couple is considered promiscuous when a marital cohabitation. Not saying nothing. Do they get anything or they don't get something?
And now they still require to give the money, but since the woman doesn't have this document that says she's got 200 zuz coming to her in the event of divorce or death, she doesn't rely on it. She doesn't feel comfortable in the marriage. She doesn't like fully agreeing to it, so to speak. She's married. It's not really promiscuous, really, but it's like it is because she's not willing to go through with marriage so much without that document. If you cohabit with this woman without marriage, it's promiscuous. So that's what he's saying. He's using a very she's not. She doesn't feel committed. Exactly. Yes, exactly. She's not willing. It's very hard for her to commit without her insurance policy. Ksuba. Okay. Okay, so let's go to the Gemara. Do you like it? I think that's right. Yeah. She's like it. She's a concubine. That's the word. Remember that. I guess. Yeah. So we don't do that anymore. Some people did. We don't do that anymore. Even if people do, we don't do that anymore. Okay. So let's do the Gemara. Okay. So the Gemara says as follows: Pshita. Gemara asks the question. Pshita, isn't that obvious that you can add on to ksuba? Why would you think otherwise? A guy wants to be nice, give his wife more ksuba to show how much she means to him, how dedicated he is to the marriage, whatever, to make sure she feels comfortable in it. So Pshita, isn't that obvious that he can add on to the ksuba? So the Gemara says, no. Ma'udatem, I might think, the kitsusa of the Rabbanan. The Rabbanan set an amount, 200 for a basula, 200 virgin, 100 almana. Those are the exact amount, no more, no less. Why? Not to embarrass those who can't afford. Not everyone can write a 10,000 mana edition, a 10,000 zuz, sorry, 10,000 mana would be a fortune, million, but 10,000 zuz, or whatever, even another 200. Not everyone can afford that, commit themselves to that. So not to embarrass those who can't, you would think that the Rabbanan say no. So therefore, it's a chiddush. It's telling us an insight that no, even though you may think we don't let the person add on to not embarrass those who can, Kamash Malan, Talmud teaches no, you can add on, even though some people can, some people can't. Okay. So now we're getting into an interesting piece here to lead into tomorrow as well. A lot of 14 different. The Gemara is going to give 14 different nafkaminas, different practical ramifications. How the Tosefes, the additional part of the ksuba, is the same as the regular part of the ksuba. In other words, what do you add on? Let's say the person adds on another 100. So that extra 100 has the same din, the same laws, the same guidelines as the regular ksuba in 14 different ways. That's what the Gemara is going to say. So I have to use. There is a standard Tosefes. I think there's a standard Tosefes. I don't know what Sephardi. I know the Sephardi ksuba is different than Ashkenazi. Yeah, I don't like the Syrian. Okay. So always. I've never seen that in Ashkenazi setting. I think there's something written. The Ark Subas are different. You read the Gemara, the Mishnah here. you think it says this terminology. You think it says lo kasach bonin dichrin the havelaychim minayo inun yarsin kesach subasech yesra al chalkeim. Doesn't exactly say that terminology. It says something hinting to these things, but it's not exactly the same. So I'll have to review the ksuba. I'll go home. My wife's not looking. I'll just get one online instead. Nice. So the ksuba, most guys don't know what they're getting into. Us 20, 21, 22, 23-year-old fellows don't speak Aramaic for the most part so well. But they're committed to what you signed. That's halacha. But yeah, so I went through part of it at the beginning when we started learning ksubas. I didn't go through it word for word. From what I understood, there was some Tosefos in there. I'll have to double check that. Okay, so let's read it. So Ratza Lichtov La. So we are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines on the bottom. Ratza Lichtov La Lokakani. The Gemara points out the terminology chosen by the Mishnah, it doesn't say Ratza Lichtov La. If he wants to give her, a right for her, additional Lokatani. It doesn't learn that. It doesn't write, that the Mishnah doesn't write the terminology Ratza La. Ratza Lichtov La. He wants to write it. Rather, what does it write? Ela Ratza La Hosif. If he wants to add on. It didn't say Lichtov, or it says to add on. The implication of adding on implies that the Tosefet is exactly like the original, the main part, the Iker, so as it's called. Because it wrote the word lahosif, add on. When you add on, it takes on the properties when it's being added on to. Messiah, this is a backing up to it. This helps to that which Evo Amrabi Yanai. But Evo said the name of Yanai. To Amrabi Evo Amrabi Yanai. But Evo said the name of Yanai. Tanai Ksuva Ksuva Dami. The stipulations of the Ksuva are like the Ksuva itself. So here we're addressing specifically the Tosefes Ksuva, the additions. So this could technically, it's a machlokas Rishonim, if it applies to everything or not. But even though Rashi seems to say it applies to everything, we'll just go for simplicity's sake. We're just going to say that everything that's in, it's true according to everybody, but that everything that says, that everything that applies to the regular Ksuva, to the 200, applies to the Tosefes, to the 100. Not everything. In the following 14 ways, what the actual 200 or 100, whatever those 14 things apply to the whether you add on. Whether you add on to the 100, same rules as the initial, the Iker Ksuva, the 200 or the 100. So nafkamina, what's the practical ramifications? How are they alike? Right? So we're going to lift a bunch of cases here. Probably go back over these tomorrow. I'm going to do them one at a time. The first one is l'mocheres. L'mocheres. If she sells her ksuva. Now, you could sell part of your ksuva. I'm not talking about that. If she sells her whole ksuva, I'm selling my ksuva to Ploni. That has at least discussed as a market value. Is I sell my ksuva to Ploni, which means 200 zuz. Doesn't mean he's going to support the sell. That's a different, discuss that a bit. She says, I'm selling my ksuva, it means 200 zuz, right? This guy will get the 200 zuz in the case that it's coming to her. But if she just says, stam, I'm selling my ksuva, writes it out in the contract, that means also the Tosefes. It automatically means the Tosefes as well. Just lower this a bit. That's what it means. The two go along with each other. That's one of the ways that they're related to each other. Right, they go along with each other. So if she sells her ksuva, I'm selling my ksuva, just like that, doesn't specify Tosefes or anything, means she's automatically selling with Tosefes as well. The additional part that she's adding on. Ula mochelas, and she says she's mochel. Now, that's complicated because we have to talk about that more, about how to be mochel your ksuva. But let's just say, like Rabbi Yehuda says in writing, she's mochel ksuva, she says, I'm mochel my ksuva, or like Rabbi Yossi, she says it verbally with Aiden. That means she doesn't specify what part. It means she's mochel. She forgoes, and also the additional, the Tosefes of the ksuva. So they go along with each other. You say stam, just say I'm selling my ksuva. It means automatically Tosefes as well. She says I'm mochel. Let's just say according to Rabbi Yossi, you can say it. That's enough. She's mochel her ksuva, then she's mochel on the Tosefes as well. Third case, umoredes. A woman who's a moredes. Moredes, the woman who refuses. We'll learn this case later on. Daf Samach Gimel Rashi says, a woman who's moredes al bala, she refused to have intercourse with her husband. So there could be a case the opposite also, but just for this particular purpose of the ksuba, we're talking about this case. What's her punishment? They deduct a certain amount each week from her ksuba. They keep deducting until there's none left. Once there's none left, then she give her a get and no ksuba anymore. There's none left. So that amount you deduct is, from the 200, keeps going, and then includes, if there's tosefes, it includes the tosefes. Let's say, I don't know the amount, I forgot. We'll get there when we get there on Zaf Samach Gimel. I don't know how long it is. It's about a month, something like that. We'll get there. 3 weeks, whatever it is. The deduction from that amount. So our ksuba is like 200, and then the additional tosefes is 100. So you keep deducting X number of zuz every week that she refused to be with her husband, to have it with her husband. Deduct that amount. You get to the end of the ksuba amount, the 200, you go down to the tosefes. It continues from there as well until you're out of money, and then he divorces. That's a whole sugya mission over there. We'll get to it. But that's the idea. It's the same. Just like this thing, we're showing all the ways that the regular ikar ksuba is called, the main 200, 100 is the same as stuff you add on. In 3 ways.
There are cases where it's not. Where those others consider is distinct and discrete
Right.
from its header.
You would think that if it's listing 14 particular ways, that means other ways it's not. Yeah, you would think that.
That's not good.
I don't recall seeing the Gemara listing any things, but I imagine there are. It's a good question. I imagine there are some things that are different. There are some differences. Let me just think. I remember seeing a difference. According to Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, we have a difference right there in the Mishnah. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah would hold that if she becomes an arusa, then she doesn't get it. Then she doesn't get the tosefes. There's one. Remember, there's another one I remember saying. I forgot. There is another one. Okay, let's go on. These are three things, not differences. Three things are similar. Ulapogemes. That's what we'll just do this one, and then we'll go back to these tomorrow. Go on. Ulapogemes. Woman who's pogem b'ksuba. She admits that she received part of the ksuba. Part of the ksuba was received. Let's say 50 zuz. The husband says, no, I gave it all to her. So in order for her to collect the rest of her ksuba, she has to take a shvua, an oath, that she only got 50. She got 50, she didn't get the rest of it. She can get the rest of her ksuba. So that applies also, she's pogem the tosefes, the additional part of the ksuba. It says, I received 10 zuz of my additional ksuba. The husband says, no, she didn't get any. She wants to collect the rest of her ksuba, tosefes and the real ksuba. She has to take.
It's a classic
Mudu makes sense, yes. Exactly, yeah. Makes sense, exactly. We'll get to that also. All these cases will be discussed later. Hogemes is much further. It's on Pei Zion. But we'll get to these cases when we get to that. I'll just touch on the Tovas. The next one is when she requests her ksuba as well. When she requests her ksuba, then that's also if she requests her tosefes as well. Okay, we'll review these. We read this couple of them. There's a whole bunch. It's 14. So we'll discuss those tomorrow, God willing. Okay. Okay.